The stark corridor lined with doors made of steel complete with slits to see inside would have been at home in any horror movie. Footsteps echoed throughout the empty halls as the pair walked side by side in tandem, their muted conversation blending into the background. Passing by door after door, the pair finally stopped in front of one marked 12A in white spray paint. "Are you sure you want to interview this one?" he asked gruffly, keys jangling from his belt. The older gentleman nodded as he held onto his satchel tightly, anticipating what lay before him. The door swung inward with a creak as the white was almost blinding as the padded material lined every square inch of the room. Stains of various reds marked the walls and floor, its sole occupant sitting in a corner rocking back and forth muttering to himself. "Ya got everything ya need, doc." He nodded as he moved into the room, sitting across from the patient. "Great. If ya need me, just either bang on th door or scream real loud and I'll come runnin'." He didn't even look up at the man as he turned around and left as the door slammed shut behind them. Rifling through his satchel, the man looked up at the patient as he had not moved since he sat down across from him. Pulling out a binder and a pen, he scribbled some notes before addressing him. "Is your name Peter McAllister?" There was no response at first, however, as if he was a child caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. The rocking stopped. He looked directly at him, and instead of sounding like a crazed lunatic, he answered calmly, "Yes. Peter, my name is Aaron Carter, and I am a doctor/psychiatrist for the company you used to work for. Do you remember who you used to work for?" He nodded. "Can you tell me?" Peter nodded. "Why, yeah, it was Simmons Logging and Hauling." Writing more in his binder, Aaron looked up at him for a moment with a reassuring smile. "What happened 3 months ago, Peter? How did you wind up here?" Leaning forward as if to share a secret, he spoke in hushed tones. "I will tell you, but you need to do me a favor." "And that is?" "Scratch my nose. Please." "I would, but..." He wriggled in his straitjacket that shared the same stains as the walls. Hesitant at first, as Aaron had heard stories of patients biting deep into hands, severing fingers. However, he leaned in and used his index finger to scratch him on the nose. Letting out a contented sigh, Peter looked at him with a smile. "Thank you, sir." The way he responded made Aaron think that the man wasn't crazy. Shuffling through the papers in his bag, he pulled out a report as he started reading it. "On February 21st of this year, you were working deep in the Adirondacks on a logging job, correct?" Nodding, he started speaking as if he was talking to an old friend. "Yes, sir, that's correct. We wanted to beat out the storm that was bearing down on us, as it wasn't cold enough for snow, but they said it was going to bring a lot of rain. We had to move quickly to cut down the trees, replace them with saplings, and get out of the area before we were cut off." Studying his report, Aaron responded, "It didn't go well, I take it?" Peter glared back at him. "It was a shit show. Care to elaborate?" Peter let out a deep sigh as he started his tale. "A massive front hit us out of nowhere, dumping a lot of rain on our site. We couldn't even move from camp as you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We hoped it'd pass in a few minutes, however that turned into 2 hours later. Was the site damaged? Peter inquired. That's an understatement, as the site was flooded, trees were uprooted because of the amount of water. This one tree that was hundreds of years old laid on its side as it toppled over, as the ground was so soaked it couldn't support it. Scribbling in his notes, Aaron continued his line of questioning, and a day later that's when the first incident happened, correct? Peter shuddered, his cheerful demeanor evaporated like morning dew as he tried to process the events of what happened. Peter? Are you all right? Why am I even talking to you? You won't believe me. It's why I am here, he shouted. Aaron flinched at the man's tirade, but he did not move. And I am here to get your side of the story. The company wants to know what happened. He slumped up against the wall, letting out a long sigh. Fine. You want to know what happened? I'll tell you, starting from the beginning. We were a 6-man team. It was me, Johnson, Rodriguez, Moreno, Fitz and Kennedy. And with this type of job, you lived on site as it was miles from anywhere. We were 2 months into a 6-month hitch, and everything had been going just fine until the rains came. This was the massive front you alluded to earlier? Aaron asked. Peter nodded. I have seen some rainstorms in my time, but that one, it was a cloudburst that I had never seen before. It washed out roads leading up to the campsite, knocked over trees and created a mess that would take weeks to clear out. Scribbling down notes, he nodded. And the next day is when the first incident happened, is that correct? Yes. Can you please elaborate? Aaron pressed. We had gotten communication from the company to cease all work for at least 96 hours. They thought that would be more than enough time for the soil to dry up and operations to restart. Rodriguez wanted to go check on the local area and said he'd be back in an hour or so. And when did he come back? Peter looked around nervously as if he was caught in a lie as he attempted to speak a few times, rocking back and forth in his straitjacket. When did he come back, Peter? Aaron asked again. He didn't come back, but it did. It? Aaron was confused. What do you mean, it? Peter steeled himself, trying to get back on track as he continued his story. Around 2 hours later we noticed he hadn't come back yet, so we went out to look for him. We stuck together as nightfall was only a few hours out and we didn't want to get lost out in freezing temperatures. 30 minutes into the search we found him, buck naked in the middle of the clearing, just standing there. Aaron looked at him quizzically. Was he alive? Peter nodded yes, and his skin wasn't cold. His clothes were on the ground, and we tried wrapping him in his coat, but he fought us to keep it off. So, we lead him back to camp as we have no idea what in the hell is going on. We couldn't even raise anyone on the radio. Johnson thought he got into some hooch, and we should just let him sleep it off, and we did exactly that. Scribbling some more notes he looked up, and the next day. Peter shuddered so hard it could be seen even through the straitjacket. That's when everything turned bad, as Rodriguez turned pale and didn't even have the energy to get out of bed. His skin looked, weird, like something you'd see on a wax figure. And he expired a few hours later," Aaron said coldly. Peter glared at the doctor with murderous intent. "I don't know what the hell that thing was, but it wasn't Rodriguez. I saw him stop breathing, if only for a minute or two, and then it was like nothing happened. He claimed he felt better and would periodically go off with someone else from our group. At first, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but as time progressed, I saw it." "It?" Aaron pressed. "Ticks, doctor. Something I had never seen before. These suckers were the size of a drink coaster. But these things were different, and I hadn't seen anything like that before." "What do you mean?" "Ticks usually attach themselves to the skin and suck. These suckers burrow underneath the skin." Aaron stared at him in disbelief. "Wouldn't the person feel this insect digging into their flesh?" Philip thrashed against his bonds, causing Aaron to shrink back as he yelled, "I know what I saw. These things killed Kennedy. And out of his corpse spilled out dozens of these things." His eyes went wild as spittle formed at the corner of his mouth. Aaron leapt to his feet as he ran the short distance to the door, his eyes wide, fearful for his life. Reaching the door, he raised his arm to start banging on it when he heard a small voice from behind him. "Wait." He turned around to look at the man who was so imposing a few moments ago. Now he looked small, disheveled and broken as a tear rolled down his cheek. "Please, let me finish my story. I'm sorry I scared you. I will do my best to control my outbursts, just let me finish my story. Please." Letting out a long and tortured sigh, Aaron lowered his arm and turned to face him. He sat back down across from him as he readied his pen and notepad for the rest of the story. "Thank you," Peter said in the same small and broken voice. The next 24 hours Rodriguez went off with Fitz, and then those two would go off with someone else, and so forth. The cycle would always be the same: first you got sick and then you were fine. Then they would eat as if they hadn't eaten in weeks as their skin turned waxy. Hell, I even remember Moreno having these black sores on his arm, but he didn't even seem to notice. "Sores? From what?" Aaron asked. Peter clenched his jaw as if he was asked a dumb question that he had to answer. "Those ticks take up residence in the body, use it all up as a breeding ground, and then spread to another host. Rinse. Repeat." Aaron shuffled through his notes. "And how do you explain when security along with local law enforcement came up on the 1st of March? He looked shocked as if asked a very private question. "What are you talking about?" Rummaging in his satchel, he produced another binder that contained a stack of Polaroids. "Explain this, Peter." He looked at the Polaroids and felt his mouth go dry. The scenes depicted in them were drenched in gore, as there were severed limbs, organs, bone, and flesh. Blood had coated the walls of the cabin as the bodies were unidentifiable. There was a common thread among all the photos. The skin of the victims looked normal. Peter looked horrified as he looked at the photos. This isn't right." "No, Peter, this isn't right. Aaron said with an edge of anger in his voice. These people were murdered by you with various implements at the job site. The local law enforcement stated that you carved up 3 of them with a chainsaw. That's a lie. Peter bellowed. They weren't themselves, they were monsters. Aaron gathered up the photos, sweeping them back into his satchel. We're done here. Thank you for your time, Peter. He stood up and was ready to leave as he banged on the door sharply 3 times. Wait. Please wait. Peter's voice trembled. You have to believe me. The door clicked and swung open as Peter saw Aaron leave and saw a familiar black shape resting on the doctor's shoulder. Wait. He screamed. It's the ones you can't see. Please believe me. It's the one you can't see. The guard closed the door with a loud clang as Aaron sighed and shook his head. Told ya, doc. So what's your prognosis? He asked. Aaron shrugged. No idea. Cabin fever? A complete mental breakdown? I have all I need for my investigation, thank you. The guard nodded as he escorted him outside as Aaron shivered, wondering what could drive a man to do something like that. He felt a little feverish as he would go home and present his findings and ask for tomorrow off. He could use a day off after this as he wanted to forget about the horrors of today. Aaron remembered something that his father used to say. There are things that man does to one another that makes me wonder about the future of mankind.